Hello and welcome to month 5 of our $5 quilt club. This month we're going to be doing foundation paper piecing and partial seams. So this is going to be really fun. I'm going to do a video and I'm just going to show you how to sew one of these triangles since they are all, as you can see, they're all exactly the same. The only thing that's going to be different on these is fabric placement. So in this month's kit you will get two 2.5-inch strips, half strips of fabric. And you just want to mark where you're going to be putting each one. So this is cross stitch, so I put an X on these two where I'm going to be putting the cross stitch fabric right here and right here so that it gives the illusion of it going all the way across. And the unmarked one I have going this way is going to be my lacy one. So that's where I'm going to put those. You can switch it up if you want, but that's how I'm going to do that one. So I'm just going to start with block A here. So I'm going to get this out of the way. So A1 is our background. And I'm going to cut off the selvage because we don't want that included in our project. And then I'm going to place this right over the top and see and make sure that that's a large enough piece that covers the point, and then 1/4 inch past our seam right here. So it needs to be 1/4 inch past all the lines, and it is clearly 1/4 inch past all the lines. So there we go. Now I have, we're going to put wrong sides together, and now I have my piece all ready. I'm going to piece that, or I'm just going to pin that real quick so it doesn't go anywhere. So when I go to fold this here, I can really easily just fold it along that line. And then I can position piece 2, which is the X's. Again, I'm going to cut off my selvage. Don't want that included. And then I'm going to place this underneath, so right sides together. And I'm going to place it underneath here, make sure that it is going to work for this piece. So it needs to be 1/4 inch larger. So this is very generously large, and I'm going to be putting it there. So that's how big I'm going to cut it. Definitely want to make sure that it's 1/4 inch past this line and then 1/4 inch past this line. So this is the piece right here that I'm trying to cover, and it's all covered. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to make sure my stitch length is nice and low at 1.8. And then I'm going to start stitching before my stitch line and then go all the way across into my seam allowance and call that good. Okay, so now that that is pressed, it's sewn. Now I can use my add 1/4 ruler to trim away the excess fabric. I'm going to take this pin out because it is going to be harder to use the ruler with that. So I'm going to use the add 1/4 ruler. I'm going to butt it right up against my paper. You can see it nice, sits really nice there. And then trim away the excess. Put my pin pile. And now I can open up my piece and press that nice and flat. So I want to make sure that that is pressed all the way open and that I'm not pressing it so that it's folded like this where there's like a flap. We don't want to do that. We want to pull it nice and taut so that it covers the entire area. Okay, so the next one is A3. So I'm going to just fold on the A3. So I'm going to fold my paper. I'm going to trim away my seam allowance so that it's just 1/4 inch, and then I can easily place my background, which is going to be A3. I'm going to place it just like that so it covers it. So this triangle right here is what I'm trying to cover, and so I'm just going to cut a piece that's large enough. So that's the piece, right? That's the corner, and I cut one like a whole inch larger. But larger's no problem at all. We're just going to trim it anyway. So you can see that this triangle right here is covered on all sides. I'm going to hold that together, slide it over to my sewing machine, and then sew before the line, and then after the line, so that you can see how it completely goes in the seam allowance and then past my stitching line. That way my points will be nice and sharp. And then I can press this open. Oh, I didn't. That's actually really, that's pretty good. I'm not really going to trim that. That looks wonderful. Okay. So now A3 section is covered, and so now I'm going to do a section A4. So I'm going to use a ruler. Cardstock works really good for this. I'm just going to place it on the line and use it to kind of bend the paper so it folds really nicely. And you will have to tear a little bit of the paper out of those, out of that seam so that it will fold really, really nice. So I'm going to trim my seam allowance here. That way it's so pretty, and I can line this up really nicely. So this one doesn't have the X on it, and so I'm going to use this fabric. So right sides together as always. Make sure it extends past 1/4 inch. So that's about right there. And I just cut the paper because I know that when I cut the paper initially, I left giant chunks on it. And then I just trimmed that at the end. So I only roughly cut the paper. So now that I have right sides together, I'll line up my seam allowance so that it's 1/4 inch. And you can see this lace fabric is completely covering this trapezoid shape right here. Okay. So I'm going to hold that together, position it over by my sewing machine. So all the way in the seam allowance, all the way to the other seam allowance. Cut my threads, and then now I can see how that one worked perfectly. So I'm going to press this open. Oops. Nice and hot iron. There we go. So now that is the whole piece unit there. You have to make 4 of these. The only thing you're going to alternate is the placement of the fabrics. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this up, and I'm going to do it 3 more times. So when I'm trimming my pieces, I place a ruler right over, and I put the 1/4 inch line on the 1/4 inch line, so that I can make sure that it is gonna be perfect. So trim that side, trim this side, and then I'm gonna trim this long side here. Gotta get it lined up really nice. And then the only thing else we have left here is this teeny tiny corner, and you do want to line that up so that it's nice on, you don't want to leave that pointy. Cutting these off makes it a lot easier when you go to join them. So I did cut that off so that it matches. So you can see how it's not a point, it's got these 2 cuts right there. So that is how you sew one of the units, and once I get all of these done, I'll be back to show you how to do partial seams.